Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books. Today we're talking about Warner Brothers Discovery. I do videos on them all the time. This is like my 35th video in the last, 5-6 weeks. We're talking about the news. Just came out in Deadline, Warner Brothers Discovery International boss Gerhard Zeiler talks up development of Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, and DC franchises as major priority for Warner Brothers Discovery. So they're going to be more and more content. They are totally focused on this. They're going to spend the money on this, and they're going to make sure that the content they produce is successful and respects the brands. Yeah, as you know, the Game of Thrones new franchise, House of the Dragon, is beating out Lord of the Rings, and Lord of the Rings doesn't exactly honor Lord of the Rings. But they're also making money off Lord of the Rings because they licensed it and the films out to Amazon Prime. How amazing is that? So they make money left, right, and center. Pretty damn incredible. Before we get into this article, please do go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up when you like it. You guys have been amazing. The channel is growing. I really appreciate it. And this is what I cover: Warner Brothers Discovery, comics-related content, and comics, entertainment, business-related content. Okay, so they're developing these franchises. This was mentioned at a conference just a few hours ago at RTS London. So Gerhard Zeiler has talked of the development of franchises, including Harry Potter, DC Comics, and the Game of Thrones as the key priority for the merged Warner Brothers Discovery unit, 6 months after he was handed the top international role. And when you're going to say it's a key priority for Warner Brothers Discovery, you'll notice one thing about Warner Brothers Discovery that is different than just what Warner Media was. They don't talk about we're building a streaming competitor with Netflix. That's not their focus. Their focus is to build brands and have people love those brands and be focused on the consumer and be profitable. That's their focus. They're not interested in social justice things. They're not interested in representation. They're interested in it, in fair ways, but they're not going to take representation and put it before the brands. And for some of us who have been, passionate about some of these brands for years, we really care. We really care to see that, these guys, they're just focused on merit. They're just focused on good content, and they're going to deliver for us. That's all we want. Okay, back to the article. Delivering the RTS London keynote address, which is the main address, that's why they call it the keynote, Zeiler said the company would probably focus more on the development of franchises. He says probably a lot, but he means definitely. And flagged the major tentpoles that he sees as future cash cows, big money makers. Game of Thrones spinoff House of the Dragon and Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power are currently battling out for global eyeballs, with the Warner Bros. Discovery show performing strongly while a wealth of DC movies are incoming. And they're not just performing strongly. House of the Dragon is beating Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is getting terrible reviews. Of course, Amazon's trying to hide it, but that's for another video. Zeiler spoke confidently of an improvement in cinema audiences now that the world is emerging from the COVID pandemic. Although he conceded that fewer movies are successful, but he added, the big ones have much better success than anyone forecasted. Everyone who believes cinema is dead has been proven wrong and will be proven wrong again in the future. The theatrical business is here to stay, although of course the pandemic changed things. Zeiler was on message backing up Warner Bros. Discovery CEO David Zaslav's proclamation earlier this month that the outfit's restructure will see the creation of a team with 10-year plans focusing just on DC. Now, I keep saying I want a team. I want a 3-person team to do what Kevin Feige did for Marvel when Marvel's universe was really successful and was launched and thought out properly. Now I like to see the mention of creation of a team because I don't think they're going to find one person like Kevin Feige from back in the day. You certainly wouldn't want Kevin Feige now. He seems to be driving the Marvel universe movies into the ground. I mean, tell me if you agree with it or not with that in the comments below. You guys always leave amazing comments. I really appreciate that. By the way, who the heck is Gerhard Zeiler? He's not just the guy with a cool name. He's an Australian businessman who's the current president of Warner Bros. Discovery International, part of Warner Bros. Discovery, of course. Before taking up the role at Turner Warner, Mr. Zeiler was chief executive of the German media company RTL Group and a member of the executive board of Bertelsmann, the media conglomerate that owns the RTL Group. So he knows his stuff, and he was actually with Warner Media as part of the merger. It's interesting because he seems like he's focused and he's part of the team, but the hard-driving people at Zaslav's operation, they don't say words like probably. They say words like, well, here's what's going on, here's what we're planning to do, and this is what we're going to change. They don't say like the maybes and stuff like that. So I assume they'll have a talk with him at some point. I don't know if you noticed that, but I certainly have, looking at enough of their comments. Gunnar Wiedenfeld's, how these people talk and how they do business. They're very direct and they're very assertive. Local content strength. This is something a lot of people don't understand about Discovery, because Discovery had operations in something like 230 countries with a lot of local content. And local is very important in each individual country that you're in, because even though you want Batman and you're going to do these major projects, Harry Potter, that are going to complement and promote anything else that you do, bring in people's interest, the local content's really, really crucial for local markets to relate to it. And also, it doesn't have to be so expensive. The Discovery people were amazing at producing like local versions of content. If you have like nature shows, if you remember, there was a science show recently with Morgan Freeman. Morgan Freeman is someone they used internationally on the science show. But when they would cut to like the cool science stuff, their normal model was not to keep the same actor involved. They would normally have a localized person who might be hot in Turkey, hot in France, because that would be something that the content would feel like it was produced locally. They're just brilliant at repurposing content. Absolutely brilliant. I mean, we go on for that about like 2 hours just about that. I'm not going to do that today. Maybe on another video. Okay, local content strength. Zeiler was quick to stress the strength of local content alongside major tentpoles. Quote, "There's a rule in our industry, which is if you want to be a successful global player, you have to have relevant local stories," he said. "In order to be a top 3 player, you have to complement big hits with local relevant stories." These are really sophisticated programming people. He stressed the success of Warner Brothers Discovery-owned streamer HBO Max Spain commissions such as 30 Coins, although he was speaking after the streamer shut down the commissioning in many European territories, making around 30 people redundant so far, letting them go. And part of the letting of them go is because they have a lot of resources and their own local people on the ground in these countries. So Warner Media pays a lot of people a lot of money to do things. Truthfully, they could do it a lot more cost effectively with Discovery. And if they have enough local content in a certain country, in a certain market, they're not going to keep these extra people. They're just not. Several productions in the CEE region are continuing, but no new orders will follow. Part of Warner Bros. Discovery's strategy has been long-running partnership with Sky TV, although Zeiler talked up operating a streaming service outside the pay TV network in the coming years. HBO Max is currently unavailable in the UK due to HBO's multi-year content deal with Sky. This is a problem that they have because HBO, it has a lot of commitments internationally for a lot of the shows they do. And why do they do that? They do that to reduce the risk. So if they knew that HBO's main market, and this is pre-merger with Discovery, of course, but their main market was, let's say, the United States, if they can sell the rights to the UK and Italy and Spain, this is something that's done in a lot of entertainment production, even in comic books, actually, to subsidize the costs of production and reduce risk on things, but also if they don't have extensive distribution in UK, like for example with HBO Max, it doesn't really make sense to restrict the content to HBO Max because like there's people in the UK that could actually be watching this and enjoying it, and we could get paid for it. So we're not going to do that. They're very open about licensing out their content. We did some videos about this the last couple of weeks. If they've got something where it's very important content for their proprietary distribution, they'll keep it. But unfortunately, this is why a lot of the animation is getting canceled, because the animation is not that special for the channel. I mean, I'm a former artist myself. Back when I was a kid, I love comics. I love producing comics. I really like animation. I'm very passionate about it. But you have to understand from a business perspective, and I certainly do, they have to really see, like, what do they want the channels and their content and their distribution to be known for? You know, what do they want people focused on and expecting to see when they interact with their channels? And yes, they have animated channels, but they're not going to produce a lot of brand new animated content like they were, especially not for just HBO Max. It's just not something that people are willing, apparently, to spend the money on to get the subscriptions. They know that they're numbers people. They look at all the numbers. I know people love animation. Talking up post-merger strategy, he appeared to make a barbed jab at Netflix when stating, quote, "The path to profitability and revenue are as important as subscriber numbers. Netflix's issues with debt has also been well publicized in past years." And what they're talking about here is they are not focused. There's another whole, actually pretty good article on this. They're not focused on building, like, let's have the most subscribers. First of all, Netflix already has the most subscribers. Disney is behind them. Disney is not, quote, not near Netflix, even though it's reported sometimes that Disney has as many or more than Netflix. They don't. They're counting all the subscription services. They're counting some that they give away for free. It's phony numbers. Honestly, I never trust Disney's numbers anyway. Okay, so what they're saying is they're concerned about generating revenue and they're concerned about being profitable. And what develops their library and what develops their consumer relationships, the relationships with the people who love the content they're producing. So they're not focused on saying, like, oh, we have the most subscribers, which is great because they do a lot of stuff that you wouldn't like as someone enjoying their content if all their focus was on, like, let's get the most subscribers. Look at what Netflix has been doing with their content. They had to pull it back a little bit, but some of the content on Netflix is absurd. Really. I mean, it's ridiculous. Not just ridiculous because it's, like, not financially viable, just strange content that just, like, who would love this? Who would really care about this? Pretty much nobody. Speaking at one of the UK's major TV festivals, he said the UK is the biggest market outside the US in terms of people, employees, and businesses. Zeiler spoke after recently promoted Warner Bros. Discovery president and managing director EMEA Priya Dogra was one of the big winners from the international restructure 6 months ago. Yeah, some people have been let go and some people are getting promoted. That's how it goes. Zeiler was speaking at RTS London, an all-day event featuring the bosses of the major British broadcasters, production houses, and Baz Luhrmann. Very interesting. In another article covering this, he talked more about how focused they are in the theatrical business and why the theatrical business. Okay, coming from the Hollywood Reporter, Warner Bros. Discovery International president on his commitment to local content and saying 100% yes to the theatrical business. They want movies. Quote, "We want to be a top 3 media player, and I personally would be really disappointed if the number 3 is in front of our ranking." So they want to at least be number 3. Gerhard Zeiler tells the RTS London convention. When he's talking about the other 2 media players, he's talking about Netflix and Disney. And what's interesting is everybody knows Disney's been around a while. They had a big advantage to being a big company. They've been acquiring brands and distribution, for years and years now. Bob Iger actually did a great job acquiring brands, not so good managing them. But he did make deals. I will say that for Bob Iger. He's a deal maker. But Netflix did it with distribution. Netflix did it with their distribution strategy. They had a couple of hit shows, but having a hit show shouldn't make them like a number 1, number 2 global IP media player like Netflix was able to do. But they were innovative with how they distributed the content that they got access to. Innovative distribution. What's interesting is that's what Warner Bros. Discovery is trying to do. They're not going to do what Netflix is doing. They're not going to release content, brand new films, and only put them on the HBO Max or Discovery Plus streaming services or any other streaming service. They're looking at multiple places they can distribute their content and really protecting their brands so that people aren't disappointed with, okay, well, this is going to ruin the DC Comics brand. They are going to be really concerned with not putting out one bad anything when it comes to Game of Thrones, when it comes to Harry Potter, when it comes to any of the DC franchises. Unlike Disney, they're not pushing social justice into movies saying like, well, a lot of people won't like it, but maybe we'll get some new people who are interested by making, this representation. They're not fooling with any of that. All they're concerned about doing at Warner Bros. Discovery is creating really strong content that if you like the brand, you'll love the content. That's their focus. And that approach to content, that unique approach to brand management is not something Disney's doing. It's not even relevant for Netflix because Netflix just doesn't have that many brands. And Netflix is also limited in what it can do because, as they talk about, and they're right, of course, you can create a cultural phenomenon with something like Batman, but if all your Batman content is just not even theatrical. Imagine if Netflix had Batman and they were just releasing only new Batman movies only to Netflix. Well, I mean, for people that have Netflix, whatever, that's fine. But there's something about the movie theater experience. It's really engaging. It's a different kind of experience. Tell me if you agree or not in the comments below. Than going and watching it on even a gigantic television screen. It's not the same. Also, 3D versions of these movies. And then having movies available to multiple platforms and not just your own. There are so many ways that they distribute films, especially if they're really good now. Good movies that do well can appear in multiple places. We'll talk a little bit about that later. Okay, quote, the theatrical business is here to stay, Warner Bros. Discovery is saying 100% yes to theatrical windows, and local content is an important complement to global hits. Okay, so he's talking about theatrical windows. He's saying that we release to theaters first, rather than when Warner Media was running HBO Max initially and saying, look, we're going to do the same day and date streaming service as movie theaters, and they created an uproar, and they didn't make as much money as they might have been able to do, even though we were going through a pandemic at the time. I thought it was a good idea at the time to at least try it, and, they tried it. Zeiler spoke during an appearance at the RTS London convention. We have certainly heard about that, discussing the vision for new media and entertainment giant and its plans to harness its brands to engage audiences that the industry giant wants. Quote, the vision is actually quite easy. We are a content company, Zeiler said. Now, what Zaslav has said about Discovery for years, even long before the merger, is their focus is becoming a global IP company like Disney, like Netflix. That's what they've always wanted to do. So that's what they're doing now. They're becoming that number 3 global intellectual property content company. Zeiler said when asked about the vision of the merged Warner Bros. Discovery, quote, we tell stories in many ways, including in feature films, TV series, animation, sports, news, documentaries, and games. And this is interesting. This is another thing that they do that's unique. They used to do this at Discovery before the merger. Zaslav's focus is telling stories. So whether it's a film or it's even in sports and news, it's all stories. And it's characters. I was surprised to hear him when he first did it, and you get used to it after a while. He talks about Martha Stewart on their cooking channel as a character, and Guy Fieri as a character. These are characters in those genres. And their impression is, and what they found is, if you have someone who's interested in cooking, for example, and you have, the dominant position in the cooking channel for that niche, that brand, same thing with golf, because they did a deal with Tiger Woods as well. The ideal situation for them is get people who like a niche and then get a character / celebrity human being that represents that category. So people feel like they have a niche, and they also feel like they have a relationship that they want to cultivate with that person, that character. Martha Stewart, specifically for Martha Stewart's niche in their cooking empire. These guys have really thought about branding. They are the perfect people to be running the Warner Media intellectual properties. He touted the breadth of how the films also tells stories while highlighting the development and quality of content from DC and HBO franchises, including Harry Potter and Game of Thrones, as a key mandate for the company's management team. Quote, "That's not possible in a creative industry," he said, though when asked if hit films can be predicted with certainty. You never know exactly what a film's going to do. But they want franchises because they basically know if they have however many tens of millions of fans or more for a certain kind of content, they know if they do fan service, meaning they give fans just what they want without subverting their expectations, just give them what they want, execute at a high quality, it's got an excellent chance of success. And in multiple places. That's the whole thing. It's not just like a theatrical release. It's also for things like, pay TV. This is free-to-air Star Trek I have playing in the background. I put this up for you guys. I don't know if you know what Pluto is. Pluto is it's called free-to-air. It's essentially like a cable channel, but there's no fee for it. But they have advertising. And they don't have every movie. They don't have every TV show. They don't have always the most current shows. But apparently people are spending a hell of a lot of time watching free-to-air movies with advertising in them on Pluto. And really, why wouldn't we? We're all used to watching TV channels and having some advertising stuck in there or whatnot. And Pluto is at your convenience. Pluto is not the only one, but Paramount is thrilled with their success. And the Warner Brothers Discovery people are looking at launching these free-to-air channels with all their content, niche-oriented stuff, and all over the place. It's really, really fascinating to me. Everyone who believed cinema is dead has been proven wrong and will be and shown to be wrong in the future. So this was discussed before. They're doing the theatrical window. They're going to make sure that people have an opportunity to see a movie in a movie theater and pay extra money to them. This is a really good lesson for all kinds of media. When we make comic books as well, even we look at can this be distributed on paper as a single floppy issue? Can it be collected in a graphic novel? Can it be sold digitally? And a lot more and more comics are being sold digitally. Warner Media through DC Comics has a digital comics business for DC, and I have a couple of other friends in the industry that do kids graphic novels and things like that, and they've been telling me, especially ever since COVID, business has been booming for them for digital. It'd be a third of their revenue, really substantially. So it's very interesting to see, different windows there. As I've developed some comics, I've been looking at different distribution channels and things like that, and it's exciting. There's a lot of opportunity. So it's just great to see them look at it and say, listen, let's make great content. Let's sell it everywhere we can sell it. That'll be my rule as well. Sell it everywhere to everybody who wants it. For example, not everyone is still feeling safe to go back to the cinema after the COVID pandemic, and some may need a big film to make them go to a cinema, but movies continue to attract audiences and are a must-have. Overall, and you see Gunnar Wiedenfeld said the same thing, the CFO of Warner Brothers Discovery, "We don't believe it makes sense to put all the content we have into one window," Zeiler highlighted, arguing that was not what the consumer wants. Now, this is very different than Netflix. It's very different than what HBO Max was doing. In a recent, I see a lot of these articles. You have to forgive me, I don't recall exactly which one. In a recent article, Gunnar Wiedenfeld was explaining something, HBO Max, when they launched that, they stopped licensing a lot of their content that they would normally license. And it cost them a ton of money because they wanted to say, hey, it's exclusively on HBO Max. It's just on HBO Max. It's just on HBO Max. That's fine. But as Wiedenfeld explains, they left a lot of money on the table doing that. And how much of it really translated into getting new subscribers for HBO Max? Some people want the content, but other people don't. So you've got people, this Discovery team, Zaslav and his people, really looking carefully at all this stuff. And clearly it's content first and multiple distribution channels. They're not concerned with saying, oh, we've got a streaming service and we have half as many subscribers as Netflix. Tomorrow we're going to have 75%. They're not as concerned about that because it's not profitable. And as you can see what's happened to Netflix, their stock has been destroyed. But Netflix is now starting to talk about doing stuff like this Pluto advertising. Here's an ad. And they're doing an advertising supported version. They need to, because they need to make money. It's absolutely ridiculous that Netflix kept itself operating like that for so long. Touting the high current level of quality of content across the company and industry, he said it was key to bring the best creators in. In this context, he recounted how HBO and HBO Max Chief Content Officer Casey Bloys, who Zaslav apparently loves, bet on Euphoria when the idea was pitched to him. Asked about the importance of local content for the company, he said to really be a top three player, you need to have local content. Which we certainly have covered. His comments follow much industry debate over changes that the company unveiled over the summer, with the merged conglomerate targeting the profitable streaming subscriber growth, targeting profitable growth, not just growth at all costs, and $3 billion in cost savings. In the last quarterly report, the second quarter for 2022, Gunnar Wiedenfeld said that they plan to get $2 to $3 billion in cost savings in 2023, which is like not far away. So they're going to be getting a lot done in 2023, a lot in layoffs, but also a lot in extra spending that they don't have to do because one of the two companies, Warner Media or Discovery, already had the assets in place. Like they were going to hire 1,000 more engineers or something like that, and Warner Media already has tons of engineers. They don't need to hire them. Promoting the channels and all that, they don't have to promote in competition with each other. They can now promote together. So there's a lot they're going to be able to get done in 2023. It will no longer produce originals for HBO Max in the Nordics. That's okay. So that will be. They have laid off people. They certainly have, and they're going to be laying off more people. They just are. I don't know that they're going to be laying. They have like 40,000 employees at Warner Media. They're not going to lay off 20,000 of them, but a bunch are going to go. It detailed that it would be ceasing our original programming efforts for HBO Max in the Nordics and Central Europe, and had already ended our nascent development activities in the newer territories of Netherlands and Turkey, which had commenced over the past year. It added that the streamer would remove a limited amount of original programming to allow it to free up licensing deals. The firm's original programming efforts in Spain and France are not affected by the strategy change. It's too bad when that happens, but they got to cut some stuff. Zeiler on Tuesday also touted the really great partnership and output deal that Warner Bros. Discovery has with Comcast-owned European pay TV giant Sky that's good for both sides. He also recounted how when Warner Media was owned by AT&T, he once went to AT&T CEO John Stankey to show him how an annual letter from Sky to its customers listed only Warner Media shows in promoting its success rather than at least 50% in other years. Look, they're having a good time with us, he recalled telling Stankey. So when Sky is bragging that they're doing really well, doing good business, they're only listing their successes or Warner Media shows. It just kind of shows they're producing really important content. But Zeiler also said that the sector giant would one day probably, there he is again with the probably, want to launch a streaming service in the UK outside of Discovery Plus, which could affect the company's current deal with Sky, which gives the latter exclusive rights to HBO shows. They'll work it out. Discussing his current boss, Warner Bros. Discovery CEO David Zaslav, Zeiler said, "Whoever knows David Zaslav knows he's very ambitious, and we're an ambitious company. We want to be a top 3 media player, and I would personally be reasonably disappointed if the number 3 is in front of our ranking." So they can't accept being number 4. They will accept being number 3. But you can expect some great things from this company. They're really sharp people. They really have it together. I think this Zeiler guy needs to learn to not say the word probably. I'm sure they will teach him that. But they're going to be doing a lot to promote their franchises and make sure that their brands are really on target. I don't know if you've noticed, but I have been doing many Warner Brothers Discovery videos. You can check all of them out on the playlist. And if you would, please go ahead and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up when you like the videos. It's a huge help. Share it on social media. Even if you have 10 followers, you're helping me a lot because more and more people get to see the channel. And I will see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.